second video in the series I'm doing where I go back and look at the Resident Evil games on the PlayStation 1. With the great success from the previous game, it didn't take the team long to get production started on a new game in the series. So let's have a look at Resident Evil 2 for the PlayStation 1 console. I hope you enjoy. Resident Evil 2 is a survival horror game developed and produced by Capcom and released in 1998 for the Sony PlayStation 1 console. The release for this game though wasn't as straightforward as the previous entry in the series. Development for this game began 1 month after the completion and release of the original game, this time directed by Hideki Kamiya, who had been stepped up from his previous role as a system planner from the original game. Shinji Mikami would be the producer for this new entry, and what a dream team these two would become in the world of survival horror games. Resident Evil 2 would go through many changes before we seen the final release. The first game footage the public would see for this new game was at the V-Jump Festival in July of 1996. In the original build for this game, that would be later dubbed Resident Evil 1.5, the player would control two new characters, one called Elza Walker and the other Leon Kennedy. The team thought they'd go with the two characters who were less familiar with combat and being in situations like this unlike the previous title, but also trying to keep the fear that the original game gave players. Unlike the final version of Resident Evil 2, the two main protagonists you play as would never cross each other's paths in the game. Resident Evil 1.5 would follow a similar story as the original game, where a zombie outbreak has happened in Raccoon City 2 months after the original game, and the company behind the outbreak, Umbrella, had been shut down. All that would change though as the game's initial release was coming up in 1997. The team decided to scrap the game completely and start from scratch. They kept a few things from the original planned copy, like having Leon Kennedy as a playable character, but Elza Walker would be dropped from the game and replaced by Claire Redfield. This is Chris Redfield's sister from the original game. It's only through a fan project that people can play what was supposed to be the original Resident Evil 2. It's definitely worth a shot for hardcore Resident Evil fans to see where the second game came from. But now, it's 1998 and the final game has been released. So let's take a look at the finished project.
Resident Evil 2.
The game is set in September of 1998, 2 months after the original game. Before I get into details of the intro, I'm playing as Claire Redfield. Both playable characters have different stories, so I'll speak more on Leon's later in the video. It is explained that there has been an outbreak in the outskirts of Raccoon City, pretty much just going over the plot from the previous game. The outbreak was caused by the T-Virus, a mutant virus initially developed by Umbrella. Claire Redfield is on her way into Raccoon City to find her brother Chris Redfield, who she hasn't been in contact with since the events of the first game. It's when she stops off at a diner she finds out the severity of this outbreak. When she comes face to face with a zombie and has to escape, this is where Claire and Leon first meet. Leon saves Claire by shooting a zombie straight in the head.
Wait! Don't shoot!
Get down! We can't stay out here. Head to the police station. It'll be a lot safer.
They escape together in Leon's car. Leon explains it's his first day on the job as a Raccoon City Police Department officer. As they are driving towards the police station, a zombie appears from the back seat and they struggle to get it off. They crash, sending the zombie through the front of the windscreen. As they sit in the wreckage, they notice a truck comes speeding down the road towards them. This is when they both jump out the car in the heat of the moment. The crash causes a massive explosion. This is where both characters are split up and have to face the nightmare that awaits them alone. Now this is what I call an introduction to a game. I think the FMV for this still looks fantastic, and you could already see the massive upgrade in visuals from the previous game. We will jump back to the story towards the end of the video to find out what the fate was for our two playable characters in this. The gameplay for Resident Evil 2 is much like the original game, tank controls. As I stated in the previous video, this is classic Resident Evil. Tank controls can make the most simple things like dodging a lot more difficult, but works perfectly for this style of game in the survival horror world. Although it is still tank controls, they seem to have polished the movement up a bit, making it feel a bit more fluent and a bit faster too. You use the D-pad to control movement, pressing the square button also makes your character run, X button to inspect items and objects and also pick up items. Holding down the R1 button aims your gun. You can still control the movement of your character with the D-pad in this stance to angle up the perfect shot. Hit X and boom, you're shooting. Here's a nice touch they added to this game.
the ability to upgrade your guns. Upgrading the shotgun is a must. It's an absolute beast and the headshots you can pull off are unreal. Pressing the circle button will bring up the status screen. Here you will find what your health status currently is. Green indicates that your character is fine and in good health. A yellow colour indicates you're at caution and you may want to use a green herb to bring your health back up to fine. But if you see red, you're pretty much buggered. It'll say danger and you need to take a first aid spray immediately or else you'll be killed within the next hit or two. While we are on the subject of the player's health, here's another nice touch they added into this game. The more hits a player receives will actually be indicated by your player's stance and movement. Unlike the first game when you're at danger, the player would just look normal on screen, but in this one the player will hold a certain part of their body when standing and also become slower at walking or running the more damage you have taken. An absolute game changer at the time and makes the experience a whole lot more realistic. But yeah, back to the status screen. Here you will also be able to see what you have in your inventory. These can include weapons and ammo, puzzle pieces and health objects. You'll also be able to view notes you have picked up. Much like the first game where you could read diaries from workers to show you how crazy the outbreak has been, but also notes that have important codes you may need to unlock stuff. Which makes me wonder why when I played this back in the day, I'd write down notes when they were already right in front of me. You will also be able to view maps you have picked up for the area you are in, which lets you know what rooms you have searched and what ones you haven't. They're a bit more heavier with the puzzles in this, which I still enjoy. They don't really slow the game down at all. I actually find them to be a bit peaceful and seems good to get away from the infected for a bit to clear your mind with a good old puzzle. You'll come into contact with the other characters you aren't playing as throughout the story, keeping each other up to date on your whereabouts and any secrets you have uncovered. You can actually slightly screw the other playable character over at a point in the game. You come to a gun room and in the locker you have the choice to take one of two items. Pick whatever one you want and if you want you can take the other one too, but in my case Claire says she should leave the other item for Leon. If you do take both items though, on the next character's playthrough, in my case Leon's, you won't be able to access the locker at all. It actually seems to be a common theme for Leon getting screwed over in this game and it's absolutely snidey too.
Wait a second! What are you gonna do? Where are you going?
I still have a few loose ends to take care of. I'm counting on you.
Hello? Claire, are you there? Claire! The security office?
The graphics for me are absolutely fantastic. Still using pre-rendered backgrounds like the previous game, but having much more detail in the surroundings and layouts in this one. From when you first take control of your character just after the burning wreckage, the attention to detail with the flames is brilliant. Also the street layout making it look very realistic for its time. When playing this at a younger age, this is exactly how I'd imagine a zombie outbreak looking. And that's obviously what they were going for, and they've done a great job. Kendo's gun shop is one that always sticks out for me. Not only because of his A-game with the ladies,
Ooh, sorry about that, babe.
but the attention to detail is very well done. The shop has been emptied with civilians obviously stocking up on guns and ammunition. The game has 3 major landmarks you'll find yourself in fighting to stay alive. The first place you'll come to is the Raccoon City Police Department building. The main entrance is open floored, but once you start exploring you'll soon find many different rooms and some puzzles to solve also. One thing that always bugged me when I was younger though, is there's no stairs in the main hall of the police station to go up to the other levels. But when I got older I found out that it was actually a museum before it was a police station, so now I'm fine with that I guess. Suppose it makes sense to me now why Chief Irons is a collector of antiques. One of my favourite locations in the police station is the police cells, which is exclusive to Leon's playthrough. It's nicely laid out and terrified me when I was younger. Another one of the locations you'll find yourself in is the underground sewer system of the city. The attention to detail down here is good also, crawling with zombies and spiders. A really nice touch I always like noticing is when you kill a zombie in the sewer their bodies float to the top. Might not seem like anything much now, but back then that was a huge deal. The last major landmark in the game is Nest. It's a large laboratory located on the outskirts of Raccoon City that was operated by the Umbrella Corporation. Here's where the outbreak started, contaminating the city with the T-virus and making bioweapons like hunters from the first game and also zombies too. As good as the environments look, the same can be said for the other characters you meet and enemies too. I've covered already what Claire and Leon are up to, but you come across some good characters that help with the story progression. The first person you come into contact with is Kendall from the gun shop, and I'll say this is when you first hear the in-game voice acting in this, and I must admit it's a lot better than the first game. Not the best, but much better and not as awkward if we remember from the previous game.
What is this? Wow, what a mansion!
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
As helpful as Kendall is, he doesn't last long. You'll also meet Marvin in the police station, and in a very bad state too. He mentioned what happened in the first game, and that there was an incident in a mansion located on the outskirts of Raccoon City, and that Chris Redfield and other STARS members tried to leak the truth about Umbrella Corporation, causing this outbreak, but nobody believed him. I felt bad about having to kill him later in the game when he finally turns into a zombie. I also remember when I was younger having a guidebook for the first 3 games. I still have it actually, and they mention in it how Marvin looks like Will Smith. What do you guys think? I always found that pretty funny. You'll also come into contact with Ben in the police station's cells.
Let me guess. You must be Ben, right? Get up, now!
He'd been arrested by Chief Irons for trying to leak the truth on the outbreak. He also has a painful death.
No! Get away! No!
One of the more mysterious characters you'll meet though is Chief Irons himself. If you've been picking up files during your playthrough, you'll already know he's a bit of a psycho, but nothing prepared me for meeting him. You meet him in his office with his wife Catherine, who appears to have been infected with the virus. He was financially corrupt and had intimate knowledge of the Umbrella Corporation's research in Raccoon City and received bribes to keep them from being investigated. He was planning on covering his tracks and leaving the city. Yep, you might have guessed it. He dies a painful death too.
Ah! Help me!
But there are 2 key characters you'll meet though that are exclusive to both playthroughs and are also playable characters at certain parts in the game. Them 2 being Ada Wong and Sherry Birkin. You'll meet Ada when playing as Leon. She is looking for her husband John, which you might remember from the first game. He was a research worker for Umbrella. She's been looking for him for 6 months and believed he was hiding in the police station. The other character you'll meet exclusively with Claire's campaign is a little girl named Sherry Birkin. She had been told by her mother Annette, a worker for Umbrella, to go hide in the police station while the outbreak was happening. When playing as Claire, you'll find her running about trying to find her parents, but you have to keep her safe at some points. See, it's a nice addition to break up the play a bit when you play as her, but I feel it's more of a filler moment than anything else, and she's slow as hell too. The worst part though is when she's running about with you, if you go too far ahead she just stops and curls up in a ball until you go back and get her, slowing down the gameplay completely. At least when you're playing as Leon and Ada is following you, she gets involved with the action a bit, putting in a few gunshots here and there and keeps up with the pace your character is running at. They definitely upped their game with the enemies in this one. You have your traditional zombies a lot more detailed in this than the previous game. You can still blow their heads off with a shotgun or a magnum, but you can also blow their legs off in this one too, which is a nice touch and always satisfying to see them crawl along the floor with just their arms. The dogs are back too in this one and seem a lot more aggressive and faster. Can be dangerous in an open room with these guys. Their patterns can be a bit all over the place at times. Spiders are here too and seem to be a bit more random than before. Still terrifying to me though. The animation of their running looks really realistic and I hate the sound of their movement too. A nice selection of newer enemies are introduced too in this game, one being the Lickers. These scared the shit out of me when I was younger and their introduction is brilliant. First you see something crawl outside across the window which gave me a little jump scare, but check this out. absolutely quality. Still love seeing this when playing this classic again. The biggest pain when it comes to enemies are the plants in the laboratory section. They seem to come in two and they take up a lot of space. They can poison you too. Just hope you picked up the flamethrower to take care of these guys. You also fight a massive crocodile in the sewer section. He's easy enough to finish off, but it's an iconic moment in the game. Check this out. Now I'm sure you'll all know zombies, dogs, etc. are staples in the Resident Evil series, but I don't think anyone was ready for this new addition to the game. Mr. X. He is a tyrant much like the final boss in Resident Evil 1 and was given instructions to recover the G virus and kill everyone in sight, so yeah, he's not here to make friends with anyone. In this though, Mr. X has much more presence unlike the tyrant from the first game and follows you around and jumps out at you when you least expect it. Makes for some great jump scares. I'll never forget that part after you've made your way down tight corridors, stuck the key in you've found and the camera comes on, and you can see him walking down the corridors you just came from. One way in and one way out, so you know you have no choice but to face your fear of him again. So well brilliantly done this part. He is an absolute ammo sponge. I believe he can be taken out but does come back during later points, so I'd advise you just to run like I did. Another enemy you'll come across various times through your playthrough is William Birkin. That's Sherry's dad. Through story progression, you'll find out William Birkin injected himself with the G virus after being caught by Umbrella's Alpha team who infiltrated his office to retrieve it. Rather than handing it over, he gave himself a lethal dose and turned into a monster. You'll have a series of mini boss fights with him in his different mutated forms. He's an absolute bullet sponge much like Mr. X, but unlike Mr. X, you can't run, you have no choice but to fight him. So the game itself looks amazing. The animations for characters are a lot more polished and realistic looking, but let's see what the music and sounds are like in this. The soundtrack is one of the best in the series for me, most notably the theme for the main hall in the police station. Again with the save room theme, much like the first one, and they keep this going with the games in the series. It gives you the feeling of peace and safety from the undead that lurks outside. Absolutely love that piano, and I've been telling myself for years I'd learn it on keyboard. Trust me, I will get to it eventually. The theme for the library stands out for me too. It's very unsettling, it's peaceful, but not enough to make you feel completely safe. Another one I love, but never hear anyone give it the appreciation it deserves, and that is the theme for the experiment room in the laboratory. It's really intense for just that tiny room. Yeah, I know there's like 3 or 4 liquors to take care of first before you can start snooping around, but it's absolutely brilliant. Sadly, I can't go on too much about the music or else we'd be here all day, but trust me, you're getting the full package with this game. Now for the voice acting and general sound you'll hear. I can say the voice acting is a big step up from the original game. Not 100% right, but definitely a step in the right direction. Gone for the most part is awkward silences between dialogue and those ridiculous movements the characters would make in the original when speaking with, which is an absolute plus for me. General sounds you'll hear around certain environments are zombie noises, and even lickers lurking about. Again, going back to the start of the game, the sounds on the streets are brilliant. It makes you feel like the city is more alive, or dead depending on how you look at it. You can often hear banging in the police station too, which sounds like zombies breaking into rooms or coming through glass windows. It's very unsettling at times when you hear a really loud bang coming from somewhere nowhere near you. The ending to the game is brilliant. Once you've finished up in the underground facility, a self-destruct warning gets announced and it's time to escape. This is where you come across the final form of a heavily mutated William Birkin.
Or is it?
It's a steady boss fight. To be honest though, I got my ass handed to me when I was playing through as Claire for some reason, but when I played through as Leon I cleared it with no problem. As long as you keep your distance and keep firing, you shouldn't have a problem. Also, the theme that accompanies this boss fight is fantastic. The actual music with that opera singing on top is a nice touch. Quite unsettling really, because you're fighting an absolute freak, but fits the boss fight very well. Once taken care of, you go down a level and have to get parts to get the train up and running. Once you've managed to get the train up and running, you're faced with another boss fight. This time it's Mr. X, and the last time you would have seen him is when you pushed him off a ledge and he went flying down into a pit of lava, but he's back and meaner than before. You just need to wear him down a bit with a few rounds and you'll get a helping hand from an old friend who gives you a rocket launcher. And with one shot and scarily resembling the first game's last boss, boom, he's dead at last. Once back on the train, you, Claire and Sherry are finally safe and the game ends. An absolute masterpiece of a game, but when finished as Claire, it would appear it's not properly over. Another playthrough with Leon will reveal the real ending. Once all three are back on the train and thinking yous are safe, an alarm goes off and Leon investigates, and holy shit, it's a barely recognisable William Birkin. This is just another firing frenzy with your gun, but believe it or not, once you think it's finished, it's not. He comes back to life again. He just won't give up. Leon can't get back into the carriage where Claire and Sherry are, so he decides to climb to the roof of the moving train, while William Birkin bursts into the carriage to get Claire. In the heat of the moment, Sherry does the most useful thing she's done ever in the game. She crawls through a hatch to the main cockpit to press the button for the self-destruct timer with the help of Leon shouting from the roof. The train comes to a screeching halt and they see William Birkin moving towards them, but little does he know that thing is about to blow. The players run and it's goodnight Vienna.
So, it's finally over. Sherry, you look terrible.
No worse than you, Claire.
Come on, time to leave.
Now? What's wrong? Is something following us?
We have to go. We don't have any time to waste.
Go? Where?
Hey, it's up to us to take out Umbrella.
What an absolute fitting end for this perfect sequel. And that's what this game is, a perfect second part of the story leading on from the previous title in the series. Resident Evil 2 was received well by players and critics, with a Metacritic rating of 89, which is great, but I was slightly surprised by this when researching that. This game is spoken highly of by many gamers and regarded as the best in the series, which I really can't argue with. It's a classic. It's also worth mentioning that there are alternative covers for this game too. The version we got here, which is PAL, got this cover, and the NTSC version got this cover. What do you guys prefer? I always liked the PAL version personally. It didn't only get a release on the PlayStation 1 though, it also got a release on the Nintendo 64, believe it or not. Yeah, they managed to squeeze this whole game into one cartridge, which is mental when you think about it now. The PlayStation version had 2 discs, How did they manage to get it all in the one cart? They also added some extra stuff too, one of which is the option to change the blood type. Great idea on paper, but if you change the colour to green for example, it's only the blood that comes out from the enemies that change, which is a bit pointless when in the backgrounds there's red blood everywhere. Might be picking at nothing here, but it seems a bit off. It did have its cutbacks though, as you'd imagine being on the N64. The audio isn't as crisp as the PS1 version, and also the FMV cutscenes appear to be a lot more pixelated, but the effort is appreciated. I also seen a release on the Dreamcast and GameCube later on down the line, but I believe they are a straight port of the PS1 version. Correct me if I'm wrong though please. This has got to be the most bizarre release it's seen though, the Gamecom. Very ambitious I must say, but you'd really have to be a diehard to persevere through that playthrough. I suppose for the Gamecom it looks impressive, but to me it looks absolutely horrendous, and just listen to the running sound effects from the character. Sounds like an intense dance beat. Your big mad Leon Kennedy dishing out the disco biscuits on the dance floor. Speaking of ambitious though, there was actually plans to release it on the Game Boy Advance, and there is a playable demo available to play. You take control of Leon from the start of the game from the PS1 version. Visually looking at the backgrounds, it looks great and true to its original, but Leon looks well off and the zombies go flying when you shoot them. Can't knock it too much though, because who knows what could have been if it's seen a proper release. But here's where it gets interesting. Many years later, once the dust had settled and all the smoke had cleared, in 2015 Capcom released an official video stating Resident Evil 2 would be getting a remake, which the fans had been crying out for years after the great success of the remake of the original Resident Evil on the GameCube. This remake of Resident Evil 2 would finally be released in 2019, and it didn't disappoint. I won't go into great detail because it's worth a video of its own later, but holy shit, it was amazing.
Well, that wraps up this video. Resident Evil 2 is an absolute classic, and personally one of my favourite games on the PlayStation 1 console. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel to be kept up to date with future content I upload, and also to see the next part in this series where we take a look at Resident Evil 3 to finish off a truly brilliant trilogy for the PlayStation. That's it guys, I'll see you in the next one.